Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Recently, we were talking about how Denise George was granted access to some sealed documents in the Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia Roberts defamation case. And we talked about how that would impact her investigation, Denise George's investigation, that she has initiated within the Virgin Islands. Well, this morning, we have an article from Law and Crime that's going to add a little more context to that. The original article we read was from the Miami Herald, but like always, I like to add some context and prefer to use articles from Law and Crime or other sources that deal strictly in these sort of issues. So today we're going to revisit this whole situation with the depositions and Denise George being granted access to them, and we're going to get the perspective of Adam Klasfeld. This article is from lawandcrime.com. The headline, U.S. Virgin Islands can access sealed Jeffrey Epstein deposition and other secret files. This article was authored by Adam Klasfeld. Now, this is a pretty significant move, right? Like we talked about in the other segment when we were discussing this topic, it's a pretty significant move for Denise George to get access to these files as well. It's only going to bolster her case, and she already has a pretty strong case, folks. I mean, she has been dropping subpoenas like pigeons drop poop. She is not playing around, and she is looking to get as many of these people on record and get as much information as possible in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and his behavior in the Virgin Islands at the very least. Now, my question has been and will be, what about her predecessors? What about the people who were there before her? What about the people who were working with Jeffrey Epstein who were part of the government? Are there going to be any sanctions on them? Are they going to face any penalties? Because they should, right? If they were the ones who gave Jeffrey Epstein these sweetheart deals, and even common folk on the island, regular old citizens, knew what Jeffrey Epstein was up to, how are we to believe that these elected officials or bureaucrats had no idea? So I think that it would be nice to see Denise George go after some of them as well and at least get them on record, right? So there is a lot going on in the Virgin Islands, and we have these concurrent investigations running, and there is a lot to get to. So whenever we can add a little more context, especially when there's a bit of a lull in the news, then you know I like to do that. Because the more we understand what's going on and the easier it is for us to put the pieces together, the more chance we're going to be able to see the big picture clearly and not be confused by all sorts of nonsense, right? And folks, there is a lot of that. I'm tagged on some feeds on Twitter sometimes, and I see posts from some people, and I'm like, man, that's a big statement. What kind of evidence do you have to back that up? You see, you can't present things as fact without the evidence to back that stuff up, right? So I try to be very careful about what I present to you as factual, 100% locked in, and then what I think is happening. And I try to be very clear about that. And it seems like a lot of people don't do that. Like, I don't know. Anyway, for me, unless we have some strong circumstantial evidence at the very least, I try to just steer clear of it, right? And now that doesn't mean I don't believe that, some of that stuff is true and legit, because I do. But it's not about what I believe, it's about what we can prove, right? So it's always important to add as much context as possible and present you folks with as much information as possible so you can make your own choices and come to your own conclusions and form your own opinions. That's what I love about this group of listeners on this podcast. You folks, you get the information and then you form your own opinions, right? You don't let nobody dog walk you or gaslight you. And I think that's the most important part here. Because there is a lot, And when there is so much information, it's really important to try and get it all into context, right? And that is my goal when we talk about these stories, to try and get them into proper context so that we can have an understanding and a sense of a little bit of what's going on, right? And pull the shade back a little bit and get a better look, a clearer look behind the curtain. So that's what we're going to do with this article this morning, and we're going to see what Adam Klasfeld, has to add to the story, because his commentary when it comes to Ghislaine Maxwell and the way he breaks it down has been very, very, very good throughout this whole entire case. So, the U.S. Virgin Islands can access Jeffrey Epstein's sealed deposition and a secret list of other witnesses put on the hot seat for its enforcement action against the accused sex trafficker's estate, a federal judge in New York ruled on Wednesday. So we talked about this, right? It's huge. The secret list of witnesses, I think, is a gigantic deal. Now, I'm sure that several of those secret witnesses have already received subpoenas by Denise George, right? Leon Black, Glenn Dubin. I'm sure a couple of those guys are part of this witness list, you would think, right? Again, I don't have that information, given to me by anyone with any inside info of the story, but you would think that on those lists would be a couple of those people that have been named in the defamation case and people who played a role within Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise. The United States Virgin Islands may use these materials solely in connection with the USVI's pending Virgin Islands Criminally Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act enforcement action against the estate of Jeffrey Epstein and several Epstein-controlled entities. So, again, I think it's an incredibly awesome occurrence here in the case that we even see this Criminally Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act enforcement in these articles. And the fact that Denise George has initiated the CICO investigation is a huge deal. I think it provides precedent for it to move from from the civil realm into the criminal realm. And with the precedent set and there being a civilly motivated RICO case going on, I think that it will not be long before a criminal RICO case is announced. I am almost positive, 100% positive, that they are pursuing this case behind the scenes as a RICO case. And I think once we see one or two more arrests, then that's going to open up the floodgates, folks. U.S. District Judge Judge Preska wrote in a 17-page order advancing a probe where Epstein had a home on what locals there called Pedophile Island. And I was talking about that in the opening here of the podcast, how even all the locals knew the deal, right? The locals knew that this was Pedophile Island. You mean to tell me that the politicians that set him up with these tax havens, with these breaks, with these different sorts of benefits down on the island, that they had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was up to? I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. So I really think that Denise George should be going after some of these people and at the very least getting witness statements from them. The U.S. territory moved to intervene in an open records case involving Epstein's accused accomplice, co-conspirator, general all-around scuzzbag, child abuser, and bipedal serpent Ghislaine Maxwell, and their alleged survivor Virginia Roberts, in which an effort to bring transparency to the docket has been underway for more than a year. And we know that all started in Preska's court, right? She got the ball moving, she got everything in motion, and she's been pretty steadfast in the releasing of these documents. She hasn't been playing games, she hasn't been getting bullied, and she's faced some high-profile people, right? We know that Alan Dershowitz isn't coming to the party without some high-profile attorneys. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys are high-profile, and we know that Preska has handled herself and them very well. One of the depositions unsealed recently showed Epstein's former house manager, John Alessi, claiming that Maxwell constantly took photos of topless young women visiting Epstein's pool and kept them in an album. And you see, this is an interesting thing here. The album stuff has been something that I've been asking about, and I have not been able to find any proper answers for it. Where is this album or these albums? Does the government have them? Were they stashed somewhere? Does Borgerson have them? Does the CIA have them? Where are the albums? And I think that would be a decent question to ask the prosecutors at one of these, press conferences if we ever get to have one of them ever again. Look. It's obvious that there were mountains of evidence as far as Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's documentation of these topless girls and other racy, rated X-type pictures of minors. We know that they exist. Now, my question is, where are they? And are they going to come into play during the trial? You would think so, right? And if they go the route that I think they're going to go and supersede the indictment and add RICO charges, then for sure that those albums and those pictures and the videos, all of that will be added to evidence. But again, I'm very... I don't really trust the government and their procedures at this point. We see the way they handled the whole entire Epstein ordeal. We see what happened with their internal investigation to the Department of Justice. So forgive me if I don't have too much faith in them doing their jobs correctly. So while I will continue to hope that they pursue this the right way, I'm not going to let my guard down and think that the federal government is just magically going to do the right thing. They have to be coaxed into it, right? We have to keep on them, and we have to let them know that this is important to the populace. This is important to the citizenry, and this is important to establishing a little bit of trust in the justice system once again. The U.S. Virgin Islands government wanted the files for an enforcement action against Epstein's estate and several entities under his control pending before a superior court there. And I think that this puts Indike and Khan into a lot of jeopardy, folks. That's an aspect that isn't being talked about a lot here, but they have been named by their actual names by Denise George in court documents and elsewhere as co-conspirators with Jeffrey Epstein and people who are under the scope, right? They're people that are being looked at by this investigation as co-conspirators, not just enablers, not just employees, but co-conspirators. She has called them that. So Indike and Khan are in a lot of peril here, in my opinion. The USVI asserts in its CICO action that Epstein ran a criminal sex trafficking operation in the Virgin Islands, wherein he used his vast wealth and property holdings and a deliberately opaque web of corporations and companies to transport young women and girls to his privately owned islands, where they were held captive and subject to severe and extensive sexual abuse, Judge Preska summarized. And now you see right there in her summary why I talk about the FinCEN files and we talk about the shell companies, etc., etc. For those of you who might be new listeners and you caught that FinCEN files episode and you were wondering what the hell I was talking about in the financial world, well, it all ties in together very nicely here. And it's been part of our ongoing narrative on the podcast since pretty much the beginning. One of the first shows was about RICO and about these sorts of these criminal companies, these offshore companies, these shell companies, and how they're used by people like Epstein. So that's why the FinCEN files coming out when they did, it was like perfect timing, because we were able to add that to our conversation and we were able to use it to add a little bit of context to the overall theme of how corrupt these rich people are and how they use these sort of offshore companies to hide vast amounts of wealth and to engage in criminal operations. Epstein dodged deposition questions by repeatedly invoking his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, and Maxwell argued that this was a reason to deny the Virgin Islands access to that file. Yeah, that's really a great reason. Again, look, folks, I've said it a million times, and it becomes more apparent as the days go by. They realize that they don't have a leg to stand on, Maxwell's defense team, and they know that she is not an innocent person. So they continue to try and go hard on these technicalities and loopholes, hoping that one of them pops, hoping that one of them provides some relief for the bipedal serpent. Disagreeing, Preska noted that the government can draw an adverse inference from the fact in civil litigation. So you see, this is why we're reading this article and adding to the original Miami Herald article, because there's always little nuggets, right? Klasfeld goes into a little bit more detail here than we got from the Miami Herald article. Second, the substance of the deposition questions may, on their own, be fruitful, a jumping-off point for the USVI's significant investigatory powers, she added. So she is saying that the substance of the deposition, questions on their own, not the answers, but the questions on their own, can jumpstart and help the USVI's investigation. So Preska is very forthright with how she's putting this to them, right? She's letting them know that their attacks on the technicalities and trying to use these loopholes, she's going to stymie them at every chance possible, because this is not about the loopholes that you can find. This isn't about your relationship with the prosecutors. This is about justice being served finally after decades of this bipedal serpent allegedly getting off on it. The judge agreed, however, that the survivors may have privacy interests that deserve protection, which is why she denied a previous request to Harvard professor Alan, I kept my underpants on, Dershowitz. Now, she didn't let Dershowitz get any of this, but she did give it to the Virgin Islands and Denise George, considering that they are an investigatory body. They have power of subpoena, and they could be put under sanctions by the court if they leak this information. Whereas those safeguards aren't in place when you're dealing with Dershowitz, and you know for a fact old boy is going to leak whatever information he has if he feels like it's going to provide him a good look, right? In order to make crystal clear to the USVI the significance of the privacy interests here, the court will provide separately to the USVI a copy of the sealed order explaining why it excluded from its prior production to Mr. Dershowitz materials related to a certain non-party doe with particularly weighty privacy interests in the sealed materials at issue in this case, her ruling states. So again, there is still a doe here, a big fish, it would seem, who does not want their name to be made public. And we see the wrangling going back and forth. And hopefully, moving forward, we'll find out who this person is who wants their name kept secret. My guess is that it's Alan Dershowitz. He'll say that, no way, it's not me. I want all of this stuff made public. But I have a sneaking suspicion it's Dershowitz. Do I have any evidence to back that up? I don't. But it would be my guess that it's Dershowitz. If not Dershowitz, maybe Bill Clinton or perhaps Glenn Dubin. I don't know. So one of those type of folks, though, is probably the person that is trying to keep their name from the public sphere here. The last thing they want is that sort of egg on their face. Rumor and innuendo are one thing. Seeing it on paper and taking a look at it for yourself in a court document, that is something else entirely. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI @protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. As for my email, I'm a little backed up right now, so I'm trying to get through all of them, and I should be caught up by Monday morning. So if you sent me an email in the last 4 or 5 days and I haven't replied yet, I'm getting to it. Sorry about that. With the holidays and, that kind of stuff going on, it's a balancing act for me to try and spend as much time as I can with my family and to also spend as much time as needed on the show when I'm not in the studio. I try my best to return those emails, and I try to be available on Twitter, but I'm really not great at the social media thing, gang. I am not really good at it. Like, there's just a lot of nonsense on there that just I shake my head at, and I don't even want to deal with, to be honest with you. But as far as the emails go, I try to get back to you as soon as possible with those. Sometimes I'm just so buried that it takes a little bit. So just bear with me, have some patience, and I will try to get back to those emails as soon as possible. And as for the daily drops, if there's no new news and there's nothing I feel like we're going to add, I'm going to do a flashback episode tonight as well. That'll give me some more time to catch up on the emails and all of that stuff. So we'll see where we're at. If there is something new that I think we should jump right on, obviously we'll have a new daily drop tonight. If not, expect another flashback episode. All right, everybody. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, and I hope that your holiday weekend is going pretty good so far. Today is a day full of all sorts of sports on TV for me, and of course, more stretchy pants. All right, everybody, I'll talk to you folks later, and we will pick up where we left off, and we will see exactly what the hell is going on in the world of the scuzzbag Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators.